So, if you were walking down a bustling city street right now, maybe grabbing a coffee or just heading to work, and you feel this vague, unexplainable sense of panic,
Right.
it might actually not be your job or your bills or
Right.
like your lack of sleep. It might be because a 200 million-year-old survival application that's just running quietly in the background of your brain just realized the birds have stopped singing.
It's pretty wild to think about.
It really is. Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. Today, we are taking a seriously mind-bending journey. Our mission for this one is to unpack this sprawling collection of sources that reveal, basically, the invisible structures shaping our reality.
Yeah, from the ancient hidden programming inside our own heads to literal forgotten cities buried beneath the earth.
Exactly. Straight through to the cold, dark calculus running modern corporate and geopolitical systems.
It is a massive scope, obviously, but there is a singular thread pulling all these seemingly disparate pieces of information together, and that is that humanity suffers from a profound systemic amnesia.
Oh, complete.
We walk around completely oblivious to how our own nervous systems are wired. We have literally misplaced our own ancient history, and we remain, blissfully blind to how the systems governing our modern world actually operate behind closed doors.
And I promise you, by the time we finish this deep dive, you are going to look at everything from a walk in the park to a bottle of pain medication in a completely different light.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with that city street panic I mentioned. There is a 2022 study from the Max Planck Institute in our sources that, honestly, it completely rewired how I think about urban living.
It's a fascinating study.
Right. So they took 295 participants, put them in a lab, and just played the different ambient sounds for 6 minutes. That's it, 6 minutes of birdsong. And the participants' anxiety levels just plummeted.
Just dropped right off.
Yeah. But then 6 minutes of traffic noise, and their depression and anxiety spiked. And here's the kicker. It worked even on people who had lived in dense concrete jungles their entire lives.
People who had almost zero contact with nature.
Exactly. But I have to push back a little here because, isn't traffic noise just objectively annoying? Is it really triggering a deep biological panic, or is it just, a nuisance?
Well, it goes much deeper than just being an annoyance. Think about the underlying mechanism of mammalian evolution.
Okay.
For roughly 200 million years, our ancestors used ambient soundscapes as their primary predator detection system.
Ah, right.
If the forest was full of birdsong, it meant the environment was relaxed, small animals weren't hiding, no large predators were moving through the brush. But the moment a predator appeared...
The birds went quiet.
Exactly. That sudden cessation of sound or the introduction of chaotic low-frequency rumbling was a massive blaring warning system. Silence or chaotic noise meant immediate mortal danger.
Wow. So our brains are essentially running a background security app that we can't uninstall.
Right.
And it doesn't know you live in a high-rise apartment on the 20th floor. It just hears loud, chaotic, mechanical rumbling and assumes a saber-toothed tiger is coming around the corner.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it, yeah. Traffic noise, sirens, heavy machinery, they acoustically mimic the chaotic profiles of environmental danger.
Jeez.
So we have built modern urban environments that actively, continuously trigger our deepest evolutionary panic buttons without us even realizing it. The human nervous system is being kept in a sympathetic state.
Which is your fight-or-flight mode.
Right, constantly.
Which I guess completely explains why the concept of grounding has become such a massive topic in neurobiology lately. Like Andrew Huberman discusses this a lot.
Oh, heavily, yes.
The idea is that getting out into green spaces, like Central Park in the middle of Manhattan, it isn't just a luxury for city dwellers. It is a biological necessity.
Because it forces the nervous system to shift back into a parasympathetic or rest and digest state.
Right.
Preserving a place like Central Park isn't just about urban aesthetics or, having a nice place to eat a sandwich. It serves as a necessary biological countermeasure. You are giving that ancient, exhausted alarm system in your brain the acoustic permission to finally stand down.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so if our own brains are hiding a 200-million-year-old operating system from us, it really makes you wonder what else we've forgotten.
A lot, as it turns out.
Yeah. And when you look at the archaeological records in these materials, it turns out we haven't just forgotten our biology. We have misplaced entire civilizations.
The physical amnesia of our species is staggering. I mean, we tend to assume human history is a neat, linear progression of perfectly recorded facts.
Right, like we started in caves, we built huts, we built cities.
Exactly. But the archaeological anomalies completely shatter that timeline.
Oh, man. Let's talk about Derinkuyu in Turkey. This blows my mind.
It's incredible.
So in the 1920s, a local guy is just trying to figure out where his chickens keep disappearing to. They're slipping through a crevice behind a wall in his basement.
Just a totally mundane problem.
Right. So he knocks the wall down to get his chickens, starts digging, and accidentally uncovers a multi-level subterranean city capable of housing 20,000 people.
20,000 people. Underground.
I'm sorry, losing your keys is one thing. How does humanity completely lose the instruction manual to a subterranean metropolis? Like, where do they put all the dirt they excavated?
Yeah, the logistics are baffling.
How did 20,000 people breathe down there without suffocating?
Well, the engineering is precisely what makes it an anomaly. We are talking about miles of perfectly calculated ventilation shafts and massive circular stone doors that could only be rolled shut from the inside to defend against invaders.
It's insane. And the amnesia isn't localized to Turkey either.
Not all. The text points to the Longyu Caves in China.
Oh, right. Found in 1992.
Yeah, discovered in 1992 by local farmers who were just draining agricultural ponds. And they uncovered 24 massive man-made caverns dating back over 2,000 years.
Wow.
To build them, whoever did it had to excavate millions of tons of solid rock.
And the craziest detail there is the complete lack of paperwork. Like, this is in China, a culture historically known for meticulous, dynasty-spanning record-keeping. Yet there is absolutely zero historical mention of these caverns being constructed.
Which forces us to ask how a civilization mobilizes a labor force large enough to move millions of tons of rock and just leaves no cultural memory of it.
It makes no sense.
And it gets stranger when you look at megalithic structures. In Lebanon, there are the trilithon stones. These are perfectly cut blocks of stone weighing over 1,000 tons each.
Just for context, modern cranes struggle to lift a fraction of that weight today.
And yet these 1,000-ton stones are part of a foundation, with supposedly more advanced but much smaller Roman architectural structures built directly on top of them.
So the older stuff is bigger and better.
Yes. We don't know what technology was used to quarry, transport, or perfectly fit stones of that magnitude. We also see massive geographical anomalies like the Nazca lines in Peru.
The geoglyphs.
Right. Gigantic geoglyphs carved into the desert floor that are only visible from the sky. We didn't even know they existed until the invention of aircraft, and now AI satellite imaging is finding hundreds more of them.
And we can't gloss over what they found buried near those Nazca lines. The elongated skulls.
Ah, yes. The Paracas skulls.
I always assumed those were just the result of ancient skull binding practices, where they wrapped babies' heads to shape them for cultural reasons. But the material points out a massive biological distinction.
A crucial distinction. While skull binding changes the shape of the cranium, it cannot change the volume.
Right.
The elongated skulls found in the Paracas region possess up to 30% more cranial capacity than a normal human skull.
30%.
Furthermore, they are missing the sagittal crest.
Right, which is the connector seam on the top of the skull where the bone plates fuse together during development. Normal human skulls have that seam. These skulls do not. So we are looking at foundations of societies built by people or entities we don't remember using technology we don't understand alongside biological remains that defy standard human anatomy.
It is the literal definition of building modern society on top of amnesiac foundations.
Wow. But, the ancients might have accidentally forgotten their history through the passage of thousands of years. As we move into the modern era, the amnesia shifts from accidental to intentional.
That's a dark pivot, but yeah.
Modern systems often try to actively bury their history to protect the bottom line. And here's where it gets really interesting. This brings us to the dark calculus of corporate America.
The math of human lives.
It's like finding out the architects of our modern convenience are playing a massive game of The Sims, and they are perfectly willing to delete the pool ladder while we're swimming just to save a few bucks.
That is a chilling but honestly accurate way to frame the incentives of the free market when it operates devoid of ethical boundaries.
Yeah.
The text highlights several examples where the corporate mechanism reduces human life to a line item on a spreadsheet, starting with the infamous Ford Pinto.
This one is so rough. So pre-production crash tests for the Pinto revealed a fatal design flaw, right? The gas tank was placed in the back of the vehicle in a way that if the car was rear-ended at a specific speed, it was highly likely to rupture and explode.
They knew this before the car went to market.
Right. But instead of halting production to fix the flaw, executives sat down and did a literal dollar value calculation.
They applied a mechanism called cost-benefit analysis to human fatalities.
Which is just wild.
They estimated the number of people who would likely burn to death, calculated the average cost of a wrongful death lawsuit settlement, and compared that to the cost of recalling and retrofitting every vehicle.
Yeah, the math.
The math dictated that letting people die and paying off their families was statistically cheaper than fixing the car.
I think a lot of people might hear that and think, okay, well, that was the 1970s. We have so many more regulations now.
So.
But the materials showed that exact same mechanical logic at play in the modern opioid crisis. When you look at Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family, which, was heavily covered in the series Painkiller, they knew their drug, OxyContin, operated on the same neurological pathways as heroin.
Yet they intentionally shifted the demographic. And the mechanism of how they did this is vital to understand.
Right.
Originally, highly addictive opioids were reserved for terminal cancer patients or people suffering from acute, severe pain, say an 8 to 10 on the pain scale.
Yeah.
But a market restricted to terminal patients isn't endlessly profitable.
So they broadened the funnel. Executives funded campaigns and aggressively pushed doctors to start treating pain as a fifth vital sign, prescribing these highly addictive narcotics for patients with a pain level of 3 to 10.
3 to 10.
Every day, manageable ailments like a sore back or a toothache. They completely normalized prescribing synthetic heroin to the masses.
And the result.
The text points out that in the year 2024 alone, America saw roughly 70,000 opioid overdose deaths. That's an entire football stadium of people in 1 year.
Because when the legal fiduciary duty of a corporation is strictly to maximize shareholder value, expanding the market expands the profit regardless of the human collateral.
Exactly.
The system didn't break. It functioned precisely according to its incentives. And this mindset extends into literal warfare, too.
Yeah, man, yeah.
The sources detail extreme allegations against massive food and beverage conglomerates. Companies like Coca-Cola and Dole, formerly the American Fruit Company, allegedly funding paramilitary death squads in places like Colombia and Guatemala.
Specifically to suppress labor unions and keep their bottling plants and banana plantations cheap and operational.
Right.
It completely strips away the shiny marketing of a refreshing soda or a healthy piece of fruit. And speaking of stripping away the illusion of safety, the text brings up the 1982 Chicago Tylenol murders.
A very grim case.
7 people died because someone systematically laced random bottles of extra-strength Tylenol on store shelves with potassium cyanide.
It was a horrific moment of product tampering, but it is the entire mechanical reason why everything we buy today, from milk to medicine, has those frustrating tamper-proof foil safety seals.
Which is crazy to think about. And the craziest part about the Tylenol murders, decades later, it remains officially unsolved. No one knows who did it or why.
Just a terrifying mystery.
So we've gone from the boardroom prioritizing profit over lives to anonymous tampering. But if we scale this up even further from the boardroom to the war room, the implications of these cold, calculating systems get incredibly heavy.
They do. We are moving into geopolitical mechanics here, and we should really pause to note something important.
Yes, definitely. Just to pause here for you listening, we need to be super clear. The materials we're looking at dive into some incredibly charged global conflicts.
Specifically regarding the Middle East, the U.S. military, and various state actors.
Right. And our job here isn't to take a side or endorse these views, but just to look objectively at the mechanics of power this author is proposing. We are strictly reporting what's in the source material.
Exactly. We're strictly analyzing the theory presented in the text. And the theory they present regarding modern warfare is based on the idea of symbiosis.
Right.
The author argues that massive military apparatuses, specifically citing the United States and Israel, and designated terrorist organizations, citing Hamas, inadvertently rely on each other to survive.
I have to admit, when I first read this, it sounded completely counterintuitive. Like, how do mortal enemies need each other?
Well, you have to look at the underlying incentives of massive institutions. The logic proposed in the source is that a government cannot justify extracting $1 trillion military budget from its taxpayers or maintain vast emergency powers unless it has a terrifying existential enemy to point to.
So it's kind of like a massive, deadly professional wrestling rivalry. They might genuinely hate each other in the ring, But behind the scenes, the promoters need the match to be as terrifying and dramatic as possible to sell out the arena and secure the funding.
That analogy captures the economic and political utility of conflict pretty well. The text points to the chaotic United States withdrawal from Afghanistan as a potential example of this dark calculus.
Right. After 20 years of occupation, the U.S. military rapidly exited, leaving behind massive amounts of operational equipment.
Billions of dollars.
We are talking about billions of dollars in tanks, armored vehicles, and Black Hawk helicopters, which almost immediately fell into the hands of the Taliban.
And the source asks a really uncomfortable question here. Was that just pure bureaucratic ineptitude? Or does the overarching system essentially demand that the theater of conflict remains heavily armed to justify future defense spending?
Wow.
The author applies the same analytical lens to the ongoing devastating conflict in the Middle East. The text describes the current destruction of Gaza as looking like a slow nuke went off.
A slow nuke.
Yeah, achieved systematically through thousands of conventional bombs. But crucially, the source refuses to treat entire nations as single-minded entities. It highlights a vital nuance regarding the Israeli populace.
Yeah, it notes that before the tragic events of October 7th, hundreds of thousands of Israeli citizens spent 9 months out in the streets protesting Prime Minister Netanyahu's government.
9 months.
They were actively pushing back against proposed judicial reforms and what they saw as government overreach.
Which serves as a critical reminder when analyzing global events. You have to separate the actions of a state from the will and humanity of its citizens.
Right.
The people protesting in the streets prove that a country's populace is never a monolith. The systems of power, whether it's a corporate board maximizing profits or a military command securing dominance, often operate on a completely different set of mechanical incentives than the everyday people living under them.
It is incredibly heavy to realize how much of the world is driven by these unseen, calculating frameworks.
It's a lot to process.
If our biology is working against us, our histories is erased, our corporations view us as line items, and our governments are trapped in symbiotic cycles of conflict. Like, how does the individual human mind cope? When reality is this complex, how do we actually unplug and reset?
Well, the human mind possesses an endless, almost absurd resilience when it comes to finding a reset button.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. The materials offer some fascinating examples of how people attempt to disrupt the anxiety of the modern condition, starting with the absolute extreme of just walking away.
Right. The text mentions comedian Ari Shaffir, who literally just vanished for 6 months.
Just dropped off the map.
He went entirely off the grid in South America.
Okay.
No smartphone, no social media, no email, completely disconnected from the 24-hour news cycle. He essentially starved the anxiety machine of its input, and the result was a massive resurgence in his creative energy.
But, escaping to the jungle isn't practical for everyone.
No, definitely not.
And for some people dealing with severe trauma, a vacation just isn't enough to fix the neurological damage.
Which brings us to the fascinating shift in how we view psychedelics. We are moving away from the recreational stigma and toward the medicalization of these substances as psychological reset mechanisms.
The text highlights a major political pivot in Texas, where Dan Patrick, a historically stringent, anti-drug conservative politician, pushed to allocate $100 million for an ibogaine clinical initiative.
Which sounds wild on the surface. Like, why would a conservative Texas politician back a massive psychedelic initiative?
Because the clinical mechanism of ibogaine couldn't be ignored. The data showed it wasn't a party drug. It is highly neuroregenerative.
Wow.
It is specifically being used to help military veterans suffering from severe PTSD and traumatic brain injuries sustained in combat. It physically promotes plasticity in the brain.
Oh, allowing it to reroute around deeply entrenched trauma loops.
Exactly.
And the sources also detail the famous psilocybin studies at Johns Hopkins, which revealed just how carefully these psychological resets need to be managed. They don't just hand a patient a dose in a sterile hospital room and walk away.
No, not at all.
They created a meticulously curated 7-hour and 40-minute musical playlist designed specifically for the psychedelic experience.
The researchers describe this playlist as a non-verbal support system.
A support system.
Yeah. When the mind is navigating the deeply chaotic, often terrifying processing of suppressed trauma, the structure and emotional arc of the music acts as a literal safety net. It guides the nervous system through the experience.
That is so cool. So we have people retreating to the Amazon and scientists using neuroregenerative compounds to heal veterans. But humans also find incredibly absurd, highly niche ways to distract themselves from the weight of the world.
The microcultures we create to manufacture stress on our own terms are incredibly revealing.
The text describes these underground Dominican pool halls in the Bronx, and the environment sounds like pure, concentrated chaos.
Total sensory overload.
People are shouting, standing right over the pockets while someone is trying to shoot. Music is blasting. It's absolute bedlam. And yet the players in there are betting $30,000 a set.
30 grand.
The psychological warfare is so intense that top professionals who visit actually have to wear noise-canceling AirPods just to survive what the locals call getting sharked.
They have essentially constructed a high-stakes manufactured microcosm where the oppressive rules and anxieties of the outside world simply don't exist. All that matters is the geometry of the table.
And if you want the ultimate example of manufacturing bizarre stress, the text introduces chess boxing.
Ah, this is a great one.
This is exactly what it sounds like. Competitors step into a ring and beat the living daylights out of each other in a standard boxing round. Then, the bell rings, they take off their gloves, pull up a table to the center of the ring, and while actively concussed,
Sweating, bleeding.
with their adrenaline completely maxed out, they have to sit down in silence and try to engage their prefrontal cortex to play a high-level game of chess.
The physiological whiplash of that is astounding. You're forcing the body to rapidly toggle between the raw evolutionary violence of survival and the cold, calculated logic of higher reasoning.
It is the perfect distillation of human duality. We are a species capable of building massive, calculated military apparatuses and deleting safety mechanisms for profit, but we are also the architects of our own bizarre, joyful escapes.
Yeah.
We will invent a sport where we punch each other in the face and then politely try to remember how a knight moves on a chessboard.
It perfectly captures the tension between the invisible structures that govern us and our desperate need to navigate them.
Right.
From the 200-million-year-old alarm systems in our brains to the underground cities we forgot we built, right up to the cold calculations of modern power, the systems driving our reality are always operating in the background, whether we remember to look at them or not.
Always running.
Which leaves us with a final, necessary thought to ponder. If our brains are still evolutionarily wired to feel deep, biological panic when the birds stop singing, what unseen silences in our modern digital world are currently triggering our global anxiety without us even realizing it?
Man, that is going to keep me up at night.
It's a heavy thought.
And that is exactly why we do this. Thank you so much for taking the plunge with us into this deep dive. Keep your eyes open and keep questioning the instruction manual.